What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the 4K Motoring YouTube channel. I'm Chris, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the Ducati Multistrada. Now, not just the regular Ducati Multistrada, the V4 that we've had for a while. We've done a couple videos on that. What I want to talk about is their new release of the V4 Rally. So the Multistrada V4 Rally that just came out. That's their off-road oriented one. You guys might remember the Enduro that came out, the 1260 Enduro, the later years of the third generation of the Multistrada. Well, they now have an off-road long distance focused variant of the V4, which is interesting since this is supposed to rule all roads by itself. We now have the Pikes Peak for more on-road operation, and we now have the Rally for more off-road long distance operation. So does this bike not rule all roads? So I apologize, we're out here on some gravel roads out about an hour from Raleigh. So I wanted to get just a little feel for what this bike is doing off-road. I haven't done a lot of that with this bike. Really, at the end of the day, it's still a 500 plus 600 pound bike almost. It's not going to be a true dirt bike. I mean, it's never going to compete with a 250 300 dirt bike, something like that. But for what it is pretty capable. I've noticed that 19-inch front wheel, as opposed to the 17-inch on my last 2015 Multistrada that I had, does inspire a lot more confidence on the gravel and kind of loose terrain. So there's that. It's a little bit of extra stability, which I think is pretty nice for the bike. The Rally is going to keep the same wheel structure, basically. The bike itself underneath is pretty much the same. It's going to have a 19-inch front. They're not going up to the 21, not doing kind of extreme things like the Enduro did. So we're going to go with a 19-inch front, and we're going to keep the 17-inch rear. It is going to have the double-sided swing arm, just like the regular V4S does, and it's going to have the laced wheels as standard. Obviously, it's an off-road oriented bike. When it comes to the frame, there are some differences in the bike itself. The rear subframe is going to be extended a little bit, and that's something they note to make it a little bit easier to haul the aluminum side panniers and a lot of luggage to do some long distance stuff, to make that a little bit more possible. If you guys have been watching the channel, you know I did, right after I got this bike, a 4,000 mile roughly round trip down to Austin, Texas from Raleigh, North Carolina and back. Did an iron butt as a part of that, and I was able to use the 3 factory panniers, the plastic ones, not the rigid aluminum ones, as well as a rear seat bag from Kriega that I had. And that ended up getting me through that week-long trip just fine. I really didn't have any space issues. Actually, I had a little bit of extra room, come to think of it. So for those that are truly doing long distance stuff, I mean months out on the road, or really stuff far away from society where you need to carry a lot more with you, they've extended the subframe for that. And on top, they have what I think this bike should have come with from the factory, and that is a new fuel tank. The factory Ducati Multistrada V4S comes with a 5.8 gallon fuel tank. The V4 Rally is going to come with a 7.8 or 7.9 gallon tank, so 2 gallons bigger, a solid 2 gallons more fuel. It's going to be an aluminum tank, and it's going to have a little bit different aero, obviously, for that larger tank to kind of mesh in. That includes a storage cubby. Is going to be on this side, kind of where that black plastic is. It's going to be updated, and it's going to have a phone compartment, and they specify a vented phone compartment. I think Ducati knows this non-vented compartment that has come with the bike really is not great for modern smartphones, especially when we're running a wireless screen mirroring program. That screen mirroring program generally runs off a Wi-Fi connection, and that makes modern phones get really hot really fast. It uses a lot of power, it uses their processing. They get really hot, and in a small black box like this with no ventilation whatsoever, yes, it's waterproof, but the phone's going to overheat. You lose navigation pretty quickly, especially riding this thing in the summer. It's really not useful, which has been one of my biggest complaints with this bike since it came out. Ducati has also gone on to say that the bike will be sitting a little bit taller. I believe they said it's a little over 20 millimeters front and rear of extra travel and suspension to make it a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more capable off-road, give you a little bit more ground clearance. This bike is a pretty tall bike already. I mean, these ADV bikes are not for the shorter riders. I'm 5'8" with a 30-inch inseam. I don't have long legs. This bike, with the seat in the low position, has me not tiptoeing, but pretty close to it. I can't put both feet on the ground flat-footed at the same time. unless I hit that minimum preload button on the suspension. They do make a lowering kit if you want to spend $30,000 on a bike and then spend another couple $1,000s on the suspension getting rebuilt, but I don't think anybody's going to want to do that. They just buy a regular V4 that's already lower and put the mods on that. On the software side of things, there is a little bit different programming going into this V4 engine. The maps, it still has the same ride modes that all the other V4 Multistradas have. I know the Pikes Peak got rid of the enduro mode in favor of a race mode, but the Rally keeps the same urban, enduro, sport, and touring modes that we'd have in the regular V4S. Now, what they've done is tune them a little bit differently to basically be a little bit gentler on the power on most settings, to make those off-road modes a little bit more off-road focused, both suspension tuning and with the throttle mapping. And they've done some stuff with the touring mode with the engine output. This engine has the rear cylinder deactivation system that it was released in 2021, and it lets the rear bank of cylinders shut off when not needed. And so far that's only been when the engine's up to temperature at idle, it'll shut the rear bank of cylinders off. So when you're sitting idling in traffic, just kind of sitting around, one, it's not producing a bunch of heat up to the rider, which is very nice, and is also cooling off the engine a little bit, using a little bit less fuel. That's the idea. What they've done now is tuned it so while you are riding on low demand settings, when you're just kind of cruising, not asking a lot from the motor, you still have almost a 600cc parallel twin on this bike with the front cylinders running. So they've tuned it to engage that rear cylinder deactivation while moving. And I don't know exactly what settings. They didn't go into a lot of details on how often that would happen or what settings, but I know if you're highway touring on cruise control, low load, it'll shut off those rear cylinders while you're riding. And they say that's going to save fuel along with that extra 2 gallons in the fuel tank. I don't know if that's really the problem in this bike. Like I said, I think it's the gearing. You know, to go highway speeds, you're pulling over 5,000 RPM, and I think that's the bigger problem with this bike. I don't think it's the 2 extra cylinders that are sipping a whole lot of fuel in low demand settings, but that's what Ducati's doing. So something I've been kind of toying with the idea of is possibly getting that 7-gallon fuel tank, almost 8-gallon fuel tank, and fitting it to this V4 Multistrada. As I've mentioned, on the highway, I'm getting right about 40 miles per gallon is what I can do on the highway with this thing cruising at a reasonable speed. I've gotten up to about 43 miles per gallon. A lot of times I've hit more of that 38 mark, so averaging about 40, which gives me a fuel range of just under 250 miles with this bike. With that extra 2 gallons, that would be not quite 100 miles more, but that would definitely push me over the 250 mark up to about a 300 mile feasible range with this bike, and I think that would make the trips and the overall day-to-day a whole lot nicer. Looking at the bike, obviously the fuel tank itself will be changed with whatever this head unit is up here. Some of this trim I'm sure will have to be changed. Even things like the side panels, maybe some of the radiator supports, I don't know, might have to be changed to accommodate that larger aluminum fuel tank. It might just accommodate a little bit more on top and be a little bit taller so it doesn't really interfere with more. I'm not quite sure. I don't know what will be involved in making this switch, but I'm curious. I'm going to talk to my local dealer to see if the parts are available to be ordered, and just to see how many parts we need that are different part numbers than the parts that are on the V4S, to see what it would actually cost and how much of a pain it would be to get that 8-gallon fuel tank on the regular V4 Multistrada. Well guys, let me know what you think. Is the V4 Rally really appealing to you? Does the extra features for the extra cost really seem like it'd be worth it? Are there features that you like and don't like about the V4? Let me know in the comments below if you guys have one and you have issues with it. I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the new V4 and what they've done. Now with the Pikes Peak and the V4 out, we're missing, I guess, the only other version yet is the GT version that usually comes out towards the end. I'm assuming that's usually a last run, kind of the last year model of the outgoing model. And maybe if Ducati's willing, we might see a bike that'll have the street orientation, or at least the light dual sport orientation that the V4 comes in, maybe with some of those touring features, maybe the longer subframe, maybe that larger fuel tank, something like that. I don't know if the programming for that rear bank of cylinder deactivation, I don't know if that programming is going to eventually come to all the V4Ss. They didn't really make that clear. I know it's on the long distance touring model. So as always, thank you guys for watching 4K Motoring. Really appreciate it. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. See more content on the Ducati, the Corvette, the Porsche, whatever you're interested in. We'll have more of it here. If you have any specific questions or requests, let me know in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts on the new Ducati variant, and we'll see you next time.